Dive deep. Dive beyond. Today in Paradroid C Podcast Synthetic. Prepare for data infusion. 3, 2, 1. Good morning, insightful listeners. Before we embark on today's comprehensive news analysis, I invite you to contemplate this question. In a world where geopolitical alliances are rapidly shifting and technology continues to reshape our daily lives, how do today's events forecast the world we'll inhabit tomorrow? Welcome to Paradroid Synthetic, where we explore the most significant developments from the past 24 hours. I'm your host, guiding you through a world that's increasingly interconnected, yet paradoxically more divided than ever. Let's begin with what might be the most significant military development of the day. Ukrainian forces have engaged with North Korean units in Russia for the first time in history. This unprecedented development marks a dramatic escalation in the ongoing conflict and raises serious questions about the nature of modern warfare and international alliances. Russia has amassed approximately 50,000 troops, including these North Korean units, for what appears to be a major new offensive against Ukraine. This force concentration represents not just a military escalation, but a fundamental shift in the geopolitical landscape. Consider the implications. A nation that has historically remained isolated is now directly engaging in a European conflict. The presence of North Korean troops on Russian soil raises several critical questions. What does this mean for international sanctions? How will this affect the balance of power in Asia? And perhaps most importantly, what does this tell us about the future of global alliances? Shifting our focus to the Middle East, we're seeing significant developments that could reshape regional dynamics. Israeli strikes in Lebanon and Gaza have resulted in at least 22 casualties, marking another chapter in the ongoing tensions in the region. This escalation comes at a particularly sensitive time, as various powers attempt to maintain stability in an increasingly volatile region. Meanwhile, in Haiti, the capital has erupted in firefights following the replacement of the prime minister. This development underscores the fragile nature of political stability in regions struggling with institutional challenges. The situation in Haiti serves as a microcosm of the broader challenges facing nations in transition. In U.S. political news, President-elect Trump has named Tom Homan as the new border czar, signaling a significant shift in immigration policy approach. This appointment suggests a renewed focus on border security and immigration enforcement, which could have far-reaching implications for both domestic policy and international relations. The selection of Homan, known for his hardline stance on immigration, raises important questions about the future of U.S. immigration policy. How will this appointment affect relations with neighboring countries? What impact might this have on international trade and diplomatic relations? In Europe, we're seeing interesting developments in law enforcement and security. Greek police have made significant seizures of explosives and firearms in a major crackdown on organized crime. This operation highlights the ongoing challenges faced by law enforcement agencies in combating international criminal networks. Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, Amsterdam has faced civil unrest with a tram being set on fire, requiring police intervention to restore order. These incidents remind us of the delicate balance between public safety and civil liberties in modern democracies. In the Asia-Pacific region, the Philippine military is conducting drills focused on island seizure operations, a move that carries significant strategic implications. This military exercise comes at a time of increasing tensions in the South China Sea and reflects the growing importance of maritime security in the region. Qatar is holding a snap poll regarding its legislative voting system, a development that could have significant implications for democratic processes in the Gulf region. This move represents an interesting experiment in political reform within the context of traditional governance structures. On the technology front, Apple has announced an interesting development in travel security. Users will now be able to share the locations of lost luggage containing AirTags with airlines and airports. This integration of consumer technology with travel infrastructure represents a significant step forward in addressing one of the most common travel frustrations. As we connect these various developments, a pattern emerges. We're seeing a world where traditional alliances are being tested, technology is reshaping daily life, and security concerns are increasingly complex. The presence of North Korean troops in Ukraine, combined with technological advances in consumer security and shifts in U.S. immigration policy, paints a picture of a world in rapid transition. Today's developments suggest we're moving into an era where the lines between allies and adversaries are increasingly blurred, where technology offers both solutions and new challenges, and where local events have increasingly global ramifications. So let us revisit our opening question. In a world where geopolitical alliances are rapidly shifting and technology continues to reshape our daily lives, how do today's events forecast the world we'll inhabit tomorrow? The events we've explored today provide a glimpse into the complex tapestry of our global future. The engagement of North Korean troops in Ukraine signals a potential reshuffling of traditional alliances, while the appointment of a new border czar in the U.S. suggests a shifting landscape in immigration policy and international relations. Technological advancements, like Apple's AirTag integration with airlines, hint at a future where consumer technology increasingly intersects with global infrastructure. And regional developments, from firefights in Haiti to military drills in the Philippines, remind us that stability is a fragile construct in a world of competing interests. As we navigate this rapidly evolving landscape, it's crucial that we not only stay informed, but also think critically about the implications of each development. Today's events are not isolated incidents. They are threads in a larger narrative that we are all a part of. So, as we conclude today's episode of Paradroid Synthetic, I encourage you to keep pondering our central question. How will the events of today shape the world of tomorrow? What role will you play in this unfolding story? Remember, understanding these events isn't just about staying informed. It's about recognizing patterns, anticipating changes, and preparing for the future they might create. Until next time, stay alert, stay curious, and keep asking why. Data infusion complete.
Good morning, everyone. Ready to dive into something pretty wild? Like, picture this. You wake up one morning and boom, every continent you know, it's all just one giant landmass, stretching forever.
It's a pretty wild thought, right? That's actually Pangaea Ultima we're talking about, Earth's next supercontinent.
Next, so this isn't the first time Earth has done this whole supercontinent thing.
Oh, definitely not. Pangaea Ultima is predicted to form like 250 million years from now. But there have been supercontinents before, and they've shaped the entire history of life on Earth.
Okay, so not our lifetime, but still, super fascinating to think about. So how does this whole supercontinent thing even happen? It's not like the continents just decide to pack their bags and move in together, right?
Right. It's all about those massive tectonic plates. You know, the giant slabs of Earth's crust. They're constantly on the move, bumping into each other, pulling apart, diving under one another. It's a really slow dance, but it completely reshapes the planet.
So Pangaea Ultima, that's like the grand finale of this continental dance-off.
You could say that. And the steps to get there are pretty amazing. First, the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, they actually widen, which kind of seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, you'd think everything would be squeezing together if we're heading for a supercontinent.
Exactly. But it's like setting up the dominoes before they fall. This widening creates space for what we call subduction zones. These are areas where one tectonic plate gets forced under another one, and it's that sinking action that starts pulling things together.
So it's like a cosmic game of tug-of-war.
Kind of. So around 125 million years from now, that tug-of-war really gets going. The Atlantic starts to shrink as North America gets pulled westward and Eurasia eastward. And Africa, it's on a collision course with Europe and Arabia.
Whoa, continents on a collision course? Talk about a long commute. I can only imagine the kind of mountain ranges that kind of crash would create.
Oh, you're talking mountains that would dwarf the Himalayas. We're talking about a Mediterranean mountain range that would stretch all the way from Spain to Asia, peaks potentially even taller than Everest.
Wow, a mountain range higher than Everest. Now that's a view I'd love to see. Okay, so we got these epic mountains forming, but what about all that water? I mean, as the continents merge, wouldn't that squeeze the oceans into, I don't know, like a giant bathtub?
That's actually pretty close. What happens to the Indian Ocean is it basically gets trapped. It forms this massive inland sea. But here's the catch. We call it toxic.
Toxic. Why is that?
Well, think about it. This inland sea, it's basically cut off from the rest of the oceans. No fresh water flowing in, just constant evaporation. So the salt concentration skyrockets and the oxygen levels plummet. Plus, as organic matter decomposes in this stagnant water, it releases, well, all sorts of nasty stuff.
So super salty, oxygen-deprived, and potentially toxic sea. Okay, that's not good. And we're just getting started with the challenges on Pangaea Ultima, right? What about the climate? I mean, merging all those land masses together can't be good for the weather.
Yeah, it's not exactly a tropical paradise. We're talking about a global average temperature of 28 degrees Celsius. That's 82 Fahrenheit.
Oof, that's already hot.
And that's just the average. Interior regions of Pangaea Ultima, they could easily exceed 40 degrees Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit.
So like a permanent heat wave.
Pretty much. And to make matters worse, there's the increased solar radiation. The sun's output is predicted to be about 2.5% higher than it is today.
So even more heat. Great. Anything else trying to bake us alive on the supercontinent?
Oh yeah, don't forget about the CO2. Levels are estimated to be between 410 to 816 parts per million.
Wow. That's not good. So with all that heat, the toxic sea, the crazy high CO2 levels, what are the chances anything could actually survive on this future Earth?
Well, the predictions aren't exactly optimistic. Current models suggest only about 8% of Pangaea Ultima would be habitable for mammals.
8%. That's a pretty dire prediction.
Yeah.
So are we talking about a mass extinction event?
It's a very real possibility. But life has a way of surprising us. To understand what might survive, we have to delve into the incredible power of adaptation.
Adaptation, huh? So what would it take to survive on a supercontinent like this?
Let's explore that in part 2 of this episode. Welcome back to our deep dive on Pangaea Ultima. We left off with a pretty bleak picture, right? Scorching heat, that toxic inland sea.
Yeah, not exactly a vacation destination. But you did mention there might be some pockets of refuge, right?
Right.
Like the poles.
Right, even with the overall global temperature soaring, the polar regions would still be relatively cooler than the supercontinent's interior.
So they'd be like little islands of chill in a giant oven.
Exactly, providing a refuge for species that couldn't handle the extreme heat elsewhere.
But hold on, wouldn't it be incredibly difficult for animals to even get to those polar safe havens? I mean, we're talking about one giant landmass. No easy migration routes.
You're right, it would be a monumental journey. Imagine the competition for resources, the totally unfamiliar terrains, plus new predators. It wouldn't be a walk in the park.
It's amazing to think about, though, these pockets of life clinging to survival at the poles, while the rest of Pangaea Ultima is basically baking.
It would be a dramatic shift. And think about this. Those polar regions, they could become cradles for brand new ecosystems.
Yeah.
Shaped by the unique pressures of this future world.
Okay, so new ecosystems. What kind of creatures are we talking about here? Anything we could even imagine?
That's the most exciting part. It's really an unknown. We can make some educated guesses, but nature often throws curveballs, right? It's entirely possible that we'd see life forms totally alien to us, adapted to those cold, low-light polar conditions in ways we can't even fathom.
Okay, so we've covered the poles, but I gotta ask, what would it actually be like to stand on Pangaea Ultima? What would it look like, feel like?
Well, for starters, the air would feel much heavier, thicker than today's. All that CO2 we talked about, it would create kind of a perpetual haze, maybe even a reddish tinge to the sky.
So no blue skies and sunshine?
Not exactly. And breathing, that could be a challenge too, almost like taking shallow breaths under a heavy blanket.
So we're sweating, struggling to breathe. What's under our feet?
It would be a world of extremes. You might have these towering mountain ranges, maybe even with snow-capped peaks, despite the overall heat. But venture away from the coast and desert, as far as the eye can see.
Okay, so picture this. We're trekking across this scorching desert, sun beating down through that hazy sky. Any signs of life at all?
It wouldn't be teeming with life, that's for sure. But life finds a way, right? Think tough, drought-resistant shrubs clinging to existence, maybe a lone reptile skittering by trying to find some shade.
It sounds kind of post-apocalyptic.
A little bit. But remember those oases we see today, bursting with life in the middle of a desert. Something like that could exist on Pangaea Ultima. And of course, those polar regions we talked about, they could offer more biodiversity.
Pockets of hope in a pretty harsh world. But you mentioned earlier that there's some uncertainty about how this supercontinent forms. Could something happen to prevent Pangaea Ultima from happening altogether?
It's possible. Tectonic plates, they're constantly in motion, and the forces driving them are incredibly complex. We're talking shifts in subduction zones, changes in those deep mantle currents that circulate molten rock deep within the Earth, new oceanic ridges forming. All these things could throw off the whole process.
So Pangaea Ultima, it's not a done deal.
Not at all. Earth's history is full of surprises. Trying to predict the future, especially 250 million years out, it's a tricky business. But that's what makes it so exciting to study.
So it's like forecasting the weather, but on a completely different scale.
Exactly. And just like with the weather, unexpected events can completely change the forecast. Those uncertainties are what keep us digging deeper, trying to piece together this incredibly complex puzzle of Earth's past and future.
And the potential consequences are huge, right? I mean, even a small change in those deep Earth processes could have a huge impact millions of years down the line.
Absolutely. The survival or extinction of entire species could hinge on a seemingly small shift in the movement of those tectonic plates. It really highlights the delicate balance of life on Earth.
So we're left with a lot more questions than answers, but that's science, right?
Definitely. The unknown is what keeps us going.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from how supercontinents form to what life might be like on Pangaea Ultima, but we've only scratched the surface. In part 3, we're going to zoom out even further and think about the broader implications of Pangaea Ultima.
We'll explore how this supercontinent could impact everything from global climate and ocean currents to, well, what it means to be a planet.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
We'll see you back here soon for the final part of our Pangaea Ultima deep dive.
Welcome back for the final part of our Pangaea Ultima adventure. So we've talked about the challenges of life on this future supercontinent. But now I want to kind of zoom out, big picture. How would Pangaea Ultima impact Earth itself?
Yeah, it's wild to imagine all the land crammed together like that. It feels like it would totally change how the whole planet works, right?
Absolutely. Think about it. The way the continents are arranged right now, it affects everything. Ocean currents, weather patterns, how heat moves around the globe. Now, smash all those continents together, it would completely rewrite the rules.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, for one, you'd have these vast, uninterrupted oceans surrounding this megacontinent. The currents we know today, they would be completely reshaped. Some might disappear entirely, like the Gulf Stream. That warm current that keeps Europe relatively mild, gone.
So Europe's in for a deep freeze.
Potentially. And it's not just that. The temperature differences between the equator and the poles, they would become even more extreme. Add that to the already harsh climate of Pangaea Ultima.
So we're talking more than just a warmer planet. We're
Right.
talking about a planet with some serious climate chaos.
Exactly. Oh, and don't forget about volcanoes.
Oh, right. More volcanoes.
Yeah.
Just what we need.
When continents collide, it can trigger all sorts of volcanic activity, and all those eruptions, they spew tons of CO2 and other gases into the atmosphere.
Yeah, we're already seeing the effects of that today, right?
Yeah.
What would a surge in volcanic activity do to Pangaea Ultima?
Well, it could kick off what we call a runaway greenhouse effect. Basically, the planet's temperature just keeps spiraling upwards. Things could get so hot that even the most resilient life forms would struggle to survive.
Yikes, that sounds pretty dire. So it's like this chain reaction, one change leads to another, and things just keep getting worse.
It really highlights how interconnected everything on Earth is. The continents, the oceans, the atmosphere, life itself. It's all part of this delicate balance.
In Pangaea Ultima, it throws that balance way off. Okay, so let's talk about evolution. We've talked about how life might adapt to this supercontinent. But could Pangaea Ultima actually drive some big evolutionary changes, like completely new forms of life?
Absolutely. Think about it. Right now, continents are separated, right? So species evolve in isolation. They adapt to their specific environments. But when the continents merge, like with Pangaea Ultima, suddenly all those isolated populations come together.
So it's like a giant evolutionary mixer.
Exactly. And the results could be mind-blowing. You could have new predator-prey relationships, all kinds of novel adaptations, maybe even entirely new branches on the tree of life.
We could be talking about creatures as different from us as, say, dinosaurs are from mammals.
It's possible. Evolution is unpredictable. And events like the formation of a supercontinent, they have the power to completely reshape the story of life on Earth.
It makes you realize that Pangaea Ultima, it's not just about shifting continents, it's about the entire future of life.
It really underscores how dynamic our planet is and how life is constantly evolving to keep up.
Well, it's been an amazing journey exploring this future Earth. From those colossal mountain ranges to that toxic inland sea, Pangaea Ultima is a pretty wild place.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you.
And to our listeners, thanks for sticking with us through this deep dive. We've learned about the power of geology, the resilience of life, and the incredible timescales involved in shaping our planet. It really makes you think about our place in this grand story of change and adaptation. So keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.